Well, shalom, everyone. Rabbi Mark Greenberg and the ministry director of the TLV Bible Society, Joseph Greenberg.
Hey, what's up?
Yes, there is a family resemblance. He is my son. Amen. So
Yeah.
we're here because we wanted to just give a TLV talk about this upcoming parsha this week, which is Parshat Vayera, which literally means he appeared. So and it begins at Genesis 18 all the way through 22. But we're coming off the heels of God giving the covenant to Abram. In other words, the cutting of the covenant. Mm-hmm. Remember, every covenant is an agreement that God makes with man. Man says yes, and there's some kind of blood that is a bloodletting that is the, how do we say, that invokes the covenant. Now, here we have the covenant of circumcision. Abram's name is changed to Abraham. Mm-hmm. Sarah's name is changed to Sarai to Sarah, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, last Torah portion, basically we're dealing with Abram and Sarai. This Torah portion, we're dealing with Abraham and Sarah. Same people, different names. That's just kind of what God does.
And so we got a lot to cover. Thank you for staying with us as we walk through this. And we begin right off the bat in chapter 18. And we have what is theologically considered a theophany. Joseph, what do you know about theophanies?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay.
Do tell.
A theophany is a appearance by God in the form of a man. And we see this with Abraham and the three visitors. Okay? And he sees it. Then Adonai appeared to him. Now, this is the first time appearance comes into play versus, and God said or spoke to. Mm-hmm. At Memra's large trees while he was sitting in the entrance of his tent during the heat of the day. So, what's happening here is that Abraham is minding his own business, kind of like being, in the heat of the day and kind of like settling with his, as we say in the South, with his cup of sweet tea.
Oh, I doubt he had sweet tea.
He didn't have sweet tea. But you get the picture, and all of a sudden, it says suddenly in verse 3, 3 men were standing by him.
Yeah, I love that it's when he lifted his eyes up to see. I mean, that's kind of interesting. He's literally just doing his own business, and then just right in front of him. Which, I mean, if it were me, it probably would have freaked me out.
I'd be freaked out.
Yeah, a little bit freaked out.
But
he has an amazing response.
Go ahead.
He says, he goes and meets them, and he bows down to the ground, and he says, "My Lord, if now I have found favor in your eyes, please do not pass by your servant." So he offers them, water and bread, and so he brings them to your home, which is very interesting because in today's day and age, if 3 random dudes, show up, I'm not sure the first thing you're going to do is go bow down and invite them in your home.
At least in the South is, what are you doing in my house as you click your shotgun?
Yeah, a little bit.
It's a little bit different, but do you think in this that he knows who they are? Do you think does he have a sense of deity?
Technically, we see "my Lord" with a capital L.
Mm-hmm.
So that...
Well, actually, it's capitalized.
It is.
In verse 3.
It is. In verse 3, it's capitalized, which gives us the impression, that's something that the TLV does, is when, you're referencing, somebody who is God, as in a pronoun like him, in the New Testament, but in the Old Testament, you'll see little L-O-R-D for like regular lords and kings and stuff. But in this regard, it actually is capitalized.
Right.
So I'm getting the sense, because the TLV only does this if deity's inferred, right?
Right.
So clearly, it seems that he understands that that this is God in some form or something.
Minimally, he gets the sense of importance.
Yeah.
Okay? So he says, please let a little water be brought to you so you can wash your feet. Mm-hmm. What did Yeshua say? Yeshua said to Peter, listen, if you just wash my feet, I'll be clean. If I don't wash your feet, then guess what? You can't have any of me. And Peter responds, all right, wash all of me.
Yeah. Again, another new covenant that has an Old Testament, a Tanakh.
Connective tissue.
Source, yeah.
Okay, so he brings him some water, a little bit of bread, so that you can pass on, in other words, continue on your journey, since you've already passed by your servant. So he's considering him a servant, the practicing hospitality, which is an art form that we've really lost, especially in the United States, but it's still practiced in some parts of the world.
Yeah, and if we keep going, we see that that they tell Abraham, hey, your wife's going to have a child. And at this point, she's quite old and obviously outside. I mean, it says...
So Abram at this point is how old?
Right. It says, well, Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years, and Sarah had stopped having the way of women. So clearly she's not of childbearing age.
She's in menopause.
Right, exactly.
She's in menopause.
Yeah, so
he's 99 as far as we know right now.
Yeah, he's quite old, and this kind of thing clearly, is not normal. But she ends up laughing at the concept.
Now, what we don't know is how loud was her laugh.
Yes.
But it was loud enough for God to hear, or the three visitors to hear. And
then what's interesting is...
It actually says, Adonai said to Abram.
Yeah.
So God is in the midst of Abraham.
And what's interesting is Sarah completely denies it.
Yes.
She straight up lies and says, I didn't do anything. I didn't laugh. I didn't do that, which is, kind of interesting.
God says, no, you laughed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Abraham intercedes in verse 16, and the men got up from there, and they were looking towards Sodom. And that's when, and Abraham is walking with them to send them out. It's kind of like the same thing we do, which you walk that, so-and-so to the car, which is a lost art form. After a meal, walk them out your door and, see them on their way. And then the Lord is saying, the God of all creation, the God of Israel, Adonai says, should I keep secret from Abraham what I'm about to do? Seeing that Abraham will most certainly become a great nation and a mighty nation, and in him all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Now there's a question mark there, because he's asking himself, or is he asking the three visitors? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's definitely times when God shows more of a human side of him, where he's questioning a thought, and it kind of reminds me of a Trinity kind of experience, where he's speaking to himself as if the Holy Spirit's there, and he's, you know what I mean? Not that God contemplates, but it's, I think when it's written down in Scripture, God very often is trying to show us a human side to him that we can comprehend, right? Because he's showing compassion and thoughtfulness and empathy, right, towards Abraham, and he's asking himself, should I bring him in on it? Because this is what I think is very interesting is God is basically talking about the idea that, when do you bring people in to something?
Well, isn't that a leadership question?
Yeah.
At all levels. When do you bring people in?
Yeah, because if you
let them know what they need to know.
Yeah, because if you bring them in, too early, they can sometimes flip out. But other times it makes people feel more safe if you brought them in. But then if you bring them out, bring them in too late to something, they feel like, you didn't ask their opinion. They had no voice in the matter.
Well, this is our walk of faith.
Yeah.
Our walk of faith is that God gives us just enough. He never really outlines and lays out the master plan of your life, because you probably would freak out if you did.
Yeah, God hits just the perfect balance of when to bring us in on things and when to just keep us in the dark for our own good.
That's a really important point. That's where the trust of the Lord, that's where you've got to trust God that he knows what he's doing, even though you may be in pain, even though you may be really at a heartache position in your life or your season. You just got to keep trusting God. even when you don't feel it. That's the hard point. That's the hard
Yeah,
part.
I mean, it is definitely, I mean, it's cool to see God asking this question, because he does care about Abraham and he wants to take care of him. And he's planted in Abraham the seed of the Jewish people, right? He's brought
Right.
that promise. So
Right.
clearly,
And-
for his plan to go
And the
forth.
seed of the Messiah who turns out to be Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We can say that without trying to be anachronistic.
Yeah.
In other words, not saying we're putting Jesus
Yeah, you can
in the
find that
center.
in, if you ever wonder, you can find that in the book of Matthew. Literally the first chapter, it starts with the genealogies of Messiah. So feel free to, enjoy that later.
Okay? And then he says, okay, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great indeed, and their sin is very grievous indeed. And I want to go down now and see if they deserve destruction as its outcry has come to me. And if not, I will know. Now, this is really brings up an interesting point. If God is all-knowing, all-seeing, knows every hair on our head, why does he have to go down to a place he already knows about?
Well,
What do you think?
I'm thinking it's actually, then the men turned, because if you look in verse 22, then the
Right.
men turned from there and went towards Sodom. So it's almost like they're the embodiment of, like, you know what I mean? They're the embodiment of God, and they're going down there to look. But I agree with you. The question is, why would God have to?
Now, this is my hypothesis. Opinion only.
Yeah.
Not theological fact. Opinion only. He did this all for Abraham's benefit. All for Abraham,
Yeah.
Abraham to know
Yeah.
there's something going on, and I'm going to go down there. Because at this point, does Abraham know that God is standing in front of him?
Yeah, I think that he wants to, make this a teachable moment
Exactly.
with Abraham, and
Right.
you clearly see it in the next part, because Abraham is crying out to God and saying, "Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city,
Right.
will you really, destroy them for the sake of?" For the sake of 50, and it turns into this, negotiation between God and Abraham of, what is it going to take to save these people? How gracious are you, God?
Right.
You know what I mean? What does it take? And so I believe it gets down. They go from 50. They go down to they go from 50 to 45.
45, that's right.
And then they
Then
go
down
from
to 40, and then he goes
30.
to 30.
Yeah, and then they
you
go
know?
20, and then they go 10. And he gets God to acknowledge that he will save the city if there are 10 righteous men there. So a little bit of a negotiation. I always kind of I really enjoy reading about Abraham and God's relationship, because it's very intimate. It's
It
very
is.
unusual.
And it should be the kind of intimacy of relationship between us as believers, as his sons and daughters, who are in the Messiah, attached to the Commonwealth of Israel. So,
Yeah, I feel like, there's not a lot of people in the Bible that have this sense of intimacy
That's true.
with God, where they're having a conversation where they feel bold enough to negotiate with God. Now, obviously, Abraham's doing it on behalf of others, right? He's showing that he is
he knows
compassion.
where Lot is. He knows that Lot's
Yeah.
there. He knows that Lot is there in the midst of all that.
Right. And at this point, we don't know how big Lot's family is.
No.
So clearly this negotiation is going well for Abraham, but it ends at 10 righteous people.
Right.
And actually, I don't know if it's 10 righteous people or actually 10 righteous men. It kind of goes
It just
back
says
and forth.
10.
Yeah, it just says 10.
10 righteous individuals.
Yeah.
Okay?
So then the next chapter kind of goes into, what's happening with Lot. Well, we kind of go away from where Abraham is outside of Sodom and Gomorrah, and we kind of go right into where is Lot and what's happening with him.
And the two angels, it appears, that accompanied Adonai, accompanied the God of Israel, come to Sodom in the late evening. And Lot is sitting at his gate.
Mm-hmm.
And when he sees them, he gets up to meet them, and he says, "Please, my lords." Now, this is lowercase l. in here in verse.
Yeah,
chapter,
he doesn't. It seems
chapter 2,
here he
verse
doesn't
2.
know that they're angelic
Deity,
beings
right.
or deity or whatever. They'd be angelic beings. I don't know, because it clearly says angels, so we won't say deity. But they're angelic beings, and Lot's not in the know.
And he tells them, "Come into my house and spend the night."
Yeah, yeah, and then they're like, "Why don't we go, enjoy time in the square?" And Lot's like, "Please don't do that. That's a bad idea. Please come into my house." And they're like, "Okay, I got you."
I fear for your safety. And so they came into his house. He serves them it says a feast, okay? A great meal.
With matzah, which is interesting. This is the first time we see matzah referred to
and
in
baked
Scripture.
matzah. Yeah. Unleavened bread.
Yeah, matzah being, the unleavened bread that we see over during the times in Exodus, during the, Egyptian Exodus, And I think that it's very interesting to see this here because, you don't really associate matzah being eaten any other time other than Passover time. So
this is prior to Passover.
Right, exactly. It hasn't happened yet.
Right.
So it's a very interesting thing that they're eating that and feasting because you really don't think feasting and matzah together. It's not really a thing.
Okay. So in the midst of them feasting, we have this almost like a riot breaking out.
Yeah, basically they have a group of guys that come and attack them.
Yes, and
it says
bring those two to us.
Yeah.
So, we'll just put it bluntly, so we can have sex with them.
Yeah, basically they say so we can have relations, which is very, it just goes to show you how wicked Sodom and Gomorrah is. It's just the point blank proof of why God's considering destroying it, right? Because up till now, we don't know what's going on in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? We only know God's account.
Right.
So now, obviously, we trust God and we take him for his word, but this is the first proof that it's just, out of line.
Yeah, so Lot goes out and out of his door, shuts the door behind him and says, "Come on, brothers." Calls them brothers,
Well, he's negotiating with terrorists.
He's negotiating
pretty much.
with terrorists. And he said, "Look, don't act wickedly. I'll give you my 2 daughters."
Yeah, and that's wild.
Because it was a lesser of 2 evils in his mind. It's not something you wouldn't give your daughters out of marriage. That was also considered wicked, but it was less wicked in his eyes, I believe. But
I mean, it's a very upsetting fact that, especially because the Bible is so much about family, right? I mean, we've got Abraham, we've got Lot, their family, but the fact that that Abraham, that they're giving up the 2 daughters. I mean, it's just very upsetting that he would just throw away his family like that and would bring in. And remember, he doesn't even know they're angelic beings.
No, he
they're
has
just
no
strangers,
clue.
right?
He has no
and
clue.
he puts them above his own family, and it's just not.
It's a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
That we don't have, at least in the United States.
Other cultures do put family above, like Asian cultures, like Japanese and Chinese and Hispanic too, are very family oriented.
Very much so. But and then he continues on, and then the riot gets even worse, and they barely pull Lot back into the house, and the men say to Lot.
It's literally a miracle that they go away. It's in verse 11. Then they struck the men at the doorway of the house with blindness from youth to elderly, so they gave up trying to find the doorway.
Okay. I know.
Fascinating.
They did.
Fascinating. Miracles, it's so interesting, the miracles are already happening.
Right.
And we're 19 chapters into the Bible, and there's miracles happening.
So these angelic beings say, "Hey, listen, who else is in your family? Get them out. We're here from the Lord. We're going to pummel this place.
Yeah.
We're about to take care of Sodom, take it out. Okay? So
And then
get up and go. Get out of this place.
Right. Lot tells his son-in-laws.
Yeah.
Right. And they think he's joking.
Yeah.
They don't even take him seriously. So, he's trying to say, "Come on, family, let's get out of here." And his extended family, they just won't listen.
So by the time dawn comes, it's get out of here.
Yeah.
Get your wife, get your family, keep going, and they flee for your life, and they say, don't look behind you. And don't stop anywhere in the surrounding area. Escape to the hills, or else you're going to be swept away too. So in other words, it's very focused. Keep focused on what you need to do and get out of here. And then Lot's wife.
Yeah, it's a sad one, but a story that a lot of people are familiar with.
Right.
Is that she ends up looking back and turns into a pillar of salt, just like that. And so it's very distressing. I'm sure for Lot. And it clearly doesn't say when she does it, really.
No.
It just says that it literally, verse 26, but his wife looked behind him and she turned into a pillar of salt. So we have no idea where this happened. All we know is that they're not in Sodom and Gomorrah. They're somewhere outside of it at this point.
So he got Lot out. It rained sulfur and fire, it actually says. And he demolished the cities from where they from where they lived.
Yeah, and we're thinking like a hail fire, like hail destroying, right?
Yeah, we have no idea from a weather perspective.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Meteorologically, how did that happen?
Yeah.
How did God make that come to be?
Yeah, the closest people say is like hail,
Right.
like massive, like basketball size hail or something like that, something that could destroy, buildings and houses and stuff. But the fascinating thing is it says fire, I do believe.
Yes, it does.
Doesn't it say that? What verse
Yes.
does it say that in?
It says that in verse 24.
Yeah, verse 24, Adonai rained sulfur and fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah from Adonai out of the sky. So yeah, meteorologically, we have no idea what it looked like, but it must have been pretty devastating.
And then they leave and they go into the mountain and they're in a cave. And he and his two daughters are thinking, there's no men around here. We're going to have to take care of things ourselves.
Yeah, it's
a very sad thing that happens.
Yeah, I just you already see a divergence in how Abraham and his family operate,
Right.
and Lot and his family operate.
Now that's a very important thing to understand. The closer you are to God, the more you're going to go towards, these values that is throughout the covenants, and walk with them.
Yeah, it's just sad to see, Lot's daughters do that with him. Like you said, they have intimate relations with him, and they get pregnant by their father.
Yeah.
But they do it while he's drunk, so it's not like he knows it's happening.
Yes.
It clearly talks about the fact that it's mostly the daughters,
Right.
that are responsible for
Right.
this, and he has no idea. And what's really fascinating to me is the fruit of sin that we see here in verses 37, 38 at the end of that, which
Right.
is then the firstborn gave birth to a son and named him Moab.
The Moabites.
He is the ancestor of the Moabites to this day. So we see the Moabites come off of this. And then we say the younger also gave birth to a son and named him Ben-Ami. He is the ancestor of the son of Ammon to this day.
Ammonites.
Right. So we already see this divergence of, family, where we see where sin takes you. Because later we know that the Moabites, there's multiple times where there's Moabite women that try to marry in, and it's considered against Torah.
Oh, yeah?
Right? And so this idea that sin begots sin.
That's true.
You know what I mean? That the fruit of sin doesn't get you anywhere.
It doesn't. Well, believe it or not, we've run out of time. And we haven't even gotten through half of the parsha. This is really rich. So help us to help you and read the rest of it. We haven't even gotten to chapter 22, which is the Akedah, the binding of Isaac.
Oh, that's such a good one.
And Rebecca coming into the fold. Very supernatural story.
Yeah, I mean, it's
and we
Isaac
haven't
being
been-
born. We have, the Ishmael and Hagar. They actually end up coming back, which I found fascinating because last Torah portion we talked a lot about Hagar, but I didn't realize was that Hagar,
Right.
she's not banished then. This is when she's banished.
Correct.
And God says that the seed will go forth through Ishmael, which is very interesting, and that's where you see the Ishmaelites and
Right.
you
But the promise goes through Isaac.
yeah, clearly
And it says that.
Yeah,
Okay?
it's a great Torah portion, but get in your word, because if you can have a dialogue with somebody, it's worth it.
Next week, we're going to cover Chaye Sarah, which is Sarah's life. It begins with the death of Sarah. Join us next week. Thank you for staying with us and taking time to be with Joseph and myself.
Shalom, shalom.
God bless you, everyone.